Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Frédéric Dimanche. I'm a professor at Ryerson University, and I'm the director of the School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. And I'm very happy that we have a group of supporting colleagues who are around us for this seminar tonight. We have a number of introductions to make. And I will start, the meeting by letting Sonia explain what the Institute is and give the land acknowledgement for tonight.
Great. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for coming. So before we start any meeting here at Ryerson, we start with a land acknowledgement, and we acknowledge the land upon which we sit at Ryerson. So no matter where you are, you may have a different land acknowledgement, but for us at Ryerson, this is one that we have developed in consultation with our Indigenous communities. Toronto is the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. So before we begin, I just want to welcome you all again. Just to let you know that this is part of our Compass Speaker Series. The Compass Speaker Series is organized by Ryerson's Institute for Hospitality and Tourism Research. Our mission at the Research Institute is to facilitate and conduct research of scholarly value and significance to the tourism and hospitality field. Our focus has been to work with industry partners to conduct applied research projects that provide our students with opportunities to learn and grow. So research that we have conducted at the Research Institute have been on a broad array of issues. We focus a lot on sustainability, on destination management and marketing, Indigenous tourism, organizational behavior, crisis management these days. So we have a variety, and I really encourage you to go and take a look at our website, which is HTMResearch.ca, and there should be a slide at the end talking about some of our upcoming events. We also have a new podcast called Behind the Study that you can listen to, and each episode features a researcher and explores their research background and experiences throughout their career. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on our website. So I will pass you back to the very dynamic and dashing Frédéric Dimanche and get our wonderful panel underway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. So the reason why we're here for is because I have to give you a little bit of background, everyone. So at the school, we have an advisory council that is mostly composed of people from industry. And the people that we invited tonight to speak to us are on this advisory council. And when we met about a month ago, we were having a discussion about the state of the industry with COVID and how we could, make things better, how we could improve, what should we get ready for in the future. And when we say in the future, it's 2021, but it's also up to 2024 and how it's going. How can we as a university contribute to the recovery of the industry? How do our industry partners feel about the crisis and whether or not it will be possible for them to get out of it and to recover. So we had that discussion and we felt that it was important to share our insights with you all. And when I say you all, I'm talking to students, I'm talking to colleagues. I know we have colleagues tonight from other colleges and universities in Ontario. I know we have attendees participating from Europe and from the United States as well. We might have, some students from further away, because as we know with COVID, we've had some students staying home, wherever that home is, and we may have, some attendees from other parts of the world. So all the people who are in front of you are members of this advisory council for us. We meet on a regular basis and we discuss issues, and they are the one who advise the school about curriculum orientation, about extracurricular activities that we may be engaging in order for us to respond as much as possible to what the employers will need when our students are graduating from Ryerson University or actually from other schools and colleges. So that's kind of the background. And before we step forward, I would like to let my guests introduce themselves, and I will follow my screen. So I will start with you, Laura, if you don't mind.
Thanks very much, Frederick, and good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be with all of you virtually tonight. I'm Laura Pilata. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Distribution for Marriott Hotels of Canada. Marriott in Canada is, we have 275 hotels right now. We represent 23 of Marriott's 30 brands. So we have everything from extended stay and select service brands right through to luxury brands like Ritz-Carlton and the St. Regis in Toronto. I have been a passionate member of the Ryerson Advisory. I'm not a Ryerson grad, I will acknowledge that. I am a McMaster University grad, and then I went on to George Brown College and did some certification postgraduate. But I'm passionate about Ryerson because you know, it's the center of the city. It's really the center of the universe in my mind when it comes to, you know, the hospitality industry in Canada. And I'm really thrilled about what has gone on at Ryerson over the years and the growth and the potential. I built my career up from just quickly, you know, graduating and got my, I've always been passionate about travel, the hotel business, jumped in, got my first hotel job and just worked my way up. First through Delta Hotels, and then I was very fortunate that Marriott International acquired Delta, and they asked me to head up the sales organization in Canada. So travel will be fun again, I assure you, right in the midst of sort of a bit of a valley, but I'm telling you the future is bright. Even though we've had a really tough time, certainly this year, but there is so much potential. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that with all of you tonight.
Thank you very much, Laura. So next, Juanita.
Oh, good evening, everyone. My name is Juanita Dixon, and I'm the president and CFO of Gusto 54 Restaurant Group. We have 9 restaurants in Toronto, 1 in California, and another, let's call it 4 on the way, which was pre-COVID plan, but we'll get into that. I came on board with Gusto about 6 years ago to help transition this company from having, you know, 2 restaurants in Toronto to really becoming a global restaurant group. So we've been rapidly expanding over the last several years, and super excited about the industry. And COVID has kicked us, but we have gotten back up, and we are going to continue down this path. I am a graduate of this program, Ryerson University, and I'm super proud and always passionate to give back and to be part of the future and be part of any conversation, especially when it comes to the leaders of tomorrow, because I think it's really important that we are able to shape the minds and guide them to where this industry is heading. I graduated many years ago. I spent most of my career in advertising and marketing. My first job actually in hospitality was at the Marriott. So I worked at the Marriott for several years, and then went off into consulting and strategy on customer experience design and loyalty, and then bounced back to the hospitality industry, which is where my heart is, which is where my passion is. And I am super excited about what the future holds, because people will always go out and dine in restaurants. Hospitality is here to stay. It's going to evolve a little bit because of COVID, but I am a firm believer that we're all going to be better people and better companies coming out of this global pandemic. Super excited about being part of the conversation tonight. So thanks for having me, Frederick.
Thank you, Juanita. You're welcome. Shalab, what about you?
Thank you, Frederick. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shalap Kayat, and I've had a very enjoyable over 25 years in the hospitality industry. And currently, I'm also very fortunate to be being chair of the advisory council here. In the over 25 years, I started my career in operations after hotel school with Hyatt and with Taj. And after pursuing MBA thereafter, I joined Intercontinental Regional Head Office in Singapore, and then took a year-long career break, traveling to 5 countries and 35 cities, and then came back to the industry to join Raffles, Swiss, and Swissôtel brands. And so my career progressed from operations. After my MBA, I moved on to sales and marketing. And I was in various positions in sales and marketing, including digital, revenue management, branding, etc. And then beyond that, after Raffles and Swissôtel, as the company evolved in the last 17 years, I moved to Canada with Fairmont Hotels under FRHI. And last 15 years, I was heading a performance strategy department that was set up to look at competitive intelligence, key performance indices for the industry and for our hotels. So I've really enjoyed the career. And now after leaving Fairmont and Accor in 2018, I took a 2-year career break. And again, something that is so close to the industry, I enjoy travel a lot. And so I would travel to over 20 countries, and then came back to welcome COVID. So right now the career break has got extended, and I'm enjoying the most of what you can make of it, and hopefully either new opportunity comes across next year. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, Shalap. Think about the chance you had to do all your traveling just before COVID. Amazing.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah.
Lucky you. All right, next and the last of our participants, but certainly not the least, I'm very happy to introduce you to Wayne Smith, Professor Wayne Smith, who is the latest addition to the faculty of the Ted Rogers School of Hospitality and Tourism Management. Wayne?
Hello, everyone. My name's Wayne Smith. I'm thrilled to be at Ryerson. I was born and raised in Toronto, right downtown Toronto. So it's lovely to be home. I've spent the last 15 years at the College of Charleston, which is in Charleston, South Carolina. And if you don't know anything, when I got there, it was a city that was hosting about 2.5 million visitors. And by the time I left, we were well over 8 million tourists. So it was a city that has won the best travel and leisure destinations for the last 5 years straight. So it was a major tourism center and a major destination, and it was working in a school where industry and academics worked hand in hand. And I think that's one of the things that's really exciting about coming to a place like Ryerson, where this relationship with such great industry partners is so important. And it's working hand in hand is how we get, ultimately our job is to get talented people to work for these great organizations and setting them up for successful careers. And that's one of the things that's my other role is I'm the journal editor of the Journal of Teaching in Travel and Tourism. So I'm probably see 90% of the research in our field related to pedagogy and teaching, but also related to career and career development and that type of thing. So I'm a specialist in sort of those areas where I look at basically everything that's written in that sort of realm to see what the trends are and see what's going on across the world in terms of what's going on, both from a teaching perspective, but also from a career development perspective of hospitality students around the world. So let's get on to the main event, Frederick.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you very much. So for everyone's, we're going to spend maybe 50 to 60 minutes, depending on how the conversation goes, with the panelists, and then we'll have an opportunity for all of you to send some questions. So there is an opportunity for you to write down questions that are, if you should see at the bottom of your screen an opportunity to write a question. So please do. And Brian will keep track of them, and we will respond to them at the end of the panel discussion. So my first question really is just a brief one for everyone. COVID crisis, what is the impact on business? I mean, we keep hearing that it's bad. We know it's really bad, but what is your take with respect to your specific sector or even your own business? We'll start maybe with Juanita and Laura.
Sure. Okay, from my perspective, I guess this goes back for everyone back to March 15th. It's a date that is ingrained in my head forever and ever. And it was the date just prior to the lockdown in Toronto that we realized that this, the seriousness of this global pandemic, and had to make some really serious calls through this lens of safety first, and putting economics aside and realizing that we had an obligation to our staff, to our customers, to the world, to be part of the solution in this. And we had made a really tough decision at the time to close all of our doors in Toronto. And a day later, the city then mandated us to close all of the doors anyway. So overnight, our revenue declined by 100%. We stayed closed for 2 weeks while we relooked at all of our safety protocols. And at the time, the government had granted us the permission to be an essential service. So we had to reinvent everything that we were doing. Takeout and delivery was in Toronto, probably about 10% of what our business is. And so overnight, it became 100% of our business, and had to really reinvent every aspect of the business. So within 2 weeks, we were able to reopen up again. But during that period, we were forced to lay off over 95% of our staff, and laid off 750 people that we consider family and the bloodline of our business. And slowly we're able to reinvent and kind of come back, do takeout and delivery for a couple of months, then open into patio season, reinvent, renegotiate, relook at every single aspect of what our business was. And happy to say 6 months later that we were able to survive through this time. We're going through the second wave right now that has different challenges because of the state of government subsidies and things like that. But it was an opportunity for us to really reinvent every aspect of our business and get back to our roots of who we are as a company, really embrace the values that we hold of entrepreneurialism and leadership and community, and treating everyone like family. And that was what got us through this. And I can say with confidence that we will survive COVID-19. We're going to come out of this, as I said, better company, better people.
Thank you. Laura, what's happening at Marriott Canada?
So similar to Juanita, you know, we are an international company, and we have a significant amount of we're over 7,000 hotels internationally, and significant distribution in Asia, in China. So China, the pandemic is we think about 8 weeks ahead, right, to where we are in North America. So we quickly started to mobilize once again in the winter, and really, really tremendously in the month of March. Very similar, we closed at the height, we probably had about 30% of our hotels closed internationally, that same percentage about in Canada. Right now we have about 3 hotels that are still closed for various reasons in Canada. So we quickly mobilized around closing hotels, putting a number of our associates, upwards at one point 80% of our associates on furlough, so temporary leave, and then of course really kicking into how we can manage this health crisis, you know, with putting what we call our commitment to clean protocols. So that is, you know, our cleanliness protocols and how we're managing, you know, at every step of the way of travel into our hotels. So a very complex project, comprehensive. We partnered with a number of different organizations, as well as obviously internally, to put that together. And I think we're probably viewed as the industry leader with respect to our commitment to clean. You know, other things that were going on, you know, we have 3 stakeholders that we have to really focus on. First off is our customers and how we were managing that. Obviously our business, you know, reduced dramatically overnight. So how do we manage that relationship with, you know, cancellations? of group business and conventions and business travel and all of those kinds of things. How do we manage with our owner groups? We don't own our hotels. We manage hotels, or we have franchise agreements for the vast majority of our hotels, but our owners suffering tremendously through all of this. And really, our focus there was, a very high level of communication with them every step of the way, very regularly. Still now, we're on a weekly call with our owner boards and various ownership groups to make sure that we are supporting them. And of course, our associates, as I said, many of our associates unfortunately had to go on furlough. Many are still on furlough. We had to make some very difficult decisions through the summer on permanent, severances and layoffs with a number of people. Arnie Sorensen, our CEO, said, the hardest times ever in our company, and for so many people and for so many reasons. Some of the things that we've been doing, I will say in the summertime, we had a little bit of travel, some leisure travel. People had, massive COVID fatigue and were able to, visit the mountains and visit, smaller markets, travel locally. And we had some business through that period, particularly in the Okanagan. The Okanagan was our busiest market in Canada. We were actually, what was interesting was how quickly, we had packages together around just right before Canada Day, and we were picking up occupancy within 48 hours of people's arrival. So very, very short-term business. So fast forward to fall, leisure travel has mostly waned. Now we're dependent on business travel. It is still very sparse. We are not doing very many groups at all, as you know, because of our restrictions, and we understand that. So just to give you context, we're probably running about 25% occupancy right now in our hotels, where typically at this time of year, we would be running upwards of, 75%. I took a look at some stats. I have to make sure I don't give away too much forward information, but I wanted to share this with you. Some good things that are happening is that we have a huge increase in Marriott.com search, right? So these are people searching and looking at travel. It's because as I said, there's COVID fatigue. So people are thinking and dreaming and planning that trip that they're going to take once we get through this vaccine process. And it was extremely encouraging when they heard about Pfizer and Moderna. We saw consequently our M.com search, it started to increase. So we're watching that very, very closely. Other things we're dealing with right now, Canada is so dependent on travel from United States. And with the border being closed, although they're making decisions month to month, we don't envision that's probably going to change much until well into the winter, until everybody gets everything under control, obviously with this recent wave. So those are the things we're dealing with, is how to convince locals to travel local. I myself took a staycation to the St. Regis on the weekend. It was the best thing I could possibly have done, just to change the scenery, from my four walls. So it's encouraging, folks to travel now where they can, and if they feel comfortable. We're certainly ready and willing to welcome them. We have the protocols in place. So right now, we're just really very focused on getting through the winter. Getting people into our ski destinations, our destinations where they can, be safe and social distance and still be able to, enjoy some fresh air and be able to manage the stress that comes from the longevity of this pandemic. And then hopefully when these trials come about, then hopefully next spring and summer, we'll start to see recovery and rebound. Thank you, Laura.
So Shalap, you're still in touch with Fairmont and Accor, so I believe there is not much difference, as compared to what Laura has been sharing. Those companies are international, so they manage to get some revenues in other parts of the world that you may not be able to get in Canada. I think Canada is one of the countries that has been the most affected. If you go south, maybe Central South America, business seems to be better. Actually, that's some of the stats that we see. But Shalap, to move to another topic, this will lead, as Laura said and Juanita said, to people being on furloughed. And one of the concern is these people may not be willing to come back to the hospitality and tourism business. The sector may be losing them.
Right.
So how do we address the need for talent that we have to plan for nonetheless?
So one thing I would say is that, it is the biggest industry in the world. We have to remind ourselves of that it accounts for 10% of global GDP and 10% of global workforce. Even in Canada, it accounts for 2% of GDP, which is a huge amount. Therefore, the need for workforce is enormous. And pre-COVID, we are coming from an all-time high for the industry. There are more people that traveled in 2019 than ever before, ever in history. So the decline is a result of COVID. It's not because of fundamental structural disadvantages that the industry had. The industry was doing well, but it's primarily driven because of restrictions associated with COVID. There are, of course, certain trends that were happening in the industry that impact workforce trends as well. And the result of the pandemic is speeding up a lot of the changes that were taking place that were anticipated in a much shorter time span. So even before COVID, and even in Canada, even before COVID hit, there was a paucity of talent for the industry. And my greatest worry is that there is going to be a huge paucity of talent when the industry starts recovering. Because one thing we know is recovery is inevitable. And there are a lot of people who were employed in the last 2 years with the industry, and those that are graduating now. And I think there have to be very conscious, strong efforts at various levels of the industry, with the government, with industry associations, to make sure that there is collaboration and coordination to stay engaged with the colleagues who are trained, who have been with the industry. And so there is, as the industry starts recovering, hopefully next year, full recovery will take time. Typically, even when the 2008-9 recession took place across various regions globally, to come back to pre-recession revenues and pre-recession profitability can take anything from 7 to 9 years. But the moment the recovery starts, this is a service industry, so we need the workforce back in employment. And I think to stay engaged, to stay connected, to collaborate is very important. I do feel that there will be fundamental changes to the kind of workforce that we have had in the past because technology, I think the pressure on the bottom line is going to force the industry to embrace technology in various areas. Pre-COVID, we saw a lot of impact of intermediaries in the hotel booking side of things. So Expedia's, Booking.com's, et cetera, came on board. But I expect that the pandemic is going to give rise to technology companies enter into other functional areas of the industries, whether it's human resource, whether it is accounting, whether it is procurement. I expect a lot more, because as long as they can show savings to the operators, to the owners, those technology players will be embraced. Historically, what I've seen of the industry, hotel industry is very focused on operations. And that's why all our senior management, et cetera, and in most of the hotel schools as well, their focus of education is in operations. The need for people coming in operations is going to remain, but I feel that there's going to be a lot more opportunities in other aspects of the industry. Similar to what happened with the booking cycle, with Expedia, with Booking.com, et cetera. So there will be a lot of changes that will come on as a result of that.
Yeah,
more opportunities, essentially. So one has to be able to adapt to that change. One can't have the thinking hat of 5 years, 10 years ago.
I want to bring up one point here that you're making is one of the trends that we're seeing is Unfortunately, hospitality is taking longer to recover than, say, insurance and in healthcare and in places where the people who are in our industry have real skill sets that are transferable to those other industries. So one of the biggest challenges is going to be those low and mid-level managers that have been furloughed. The real talent is now finding jobs in other industries that are now starting their recovery and are now hiring where other places were behind. So that, I think it's going to be one of the biggest challenges for the hospitality industry, will be that a lot of the talented people are now finding their ways to the industries that have recovered slightly quicker, and I think that's going to be a real challenge for the industry to kind of get those people back or find new people to fill those holes.
So if I may just add, in the past, in recessions, the decline and recovery cycles vary by where the type of hotels are there. Luxury hotels typically decline faster, harder in a shorter time span. And the recovery is also similar in a shorter time span, but much faster recovery. And that is not true for the mid-scale or lower tier hotels. But this recession, which was primarily, it's driven by air traffic being stopped. That has caused the recession, the decline. That will show different ways of recovering. I don't think we will see the patterns that we have seen in the past. Of course, already we can see that the recovery patterns are quite varied across the globe. And resort destinations are likely to see faster recovery than city center. The demographics, this market segment that we are seeing in hotels sitting at 15, 20% occupancy today is more hospital-related staff, government-related staff. So this is not past business that has come back. When we are seeing city hotels at 20, 25%, this is not necessarily the same segments that were staying with us before. But resorts, there's going to be a change in group business. There's going to be a change in leisure business, especially with people working permanently from home. And I think that is something that requires a lot of change in tactics, but also in terms of design. And especially for large hotels that are focused very much on groups and conventions, there's going to be a much more greater challenge in adapting to that change in segments.
Yeah, so thank you, Shalap and Wayne. So one of the auditors, Dory, mentioned that Accor has a good image because one of the things that they're focusing right now is really on people, their staff and the customers. I mean, they are trying to make a lot of efforts to focus on people because they need to manage that relationship on the one hand with the customers and on the other hand with their associates and their employees or former employees. So Laura, how are you managing this, and Juanita as well? Because you have a number of people, like you said, who are furloughed. How do you keep in touch with them? How do you keep the motivation? How do you make sure that they're going to come back to you?
Well, I will say for Marriott, at the outset of all of this, one of the basic tenets that we said was that we need to make sure that we are over communicating, not under communicating, because it relates to people's jobs or our customers. We need to make sure that they understand whether it's what happens when they come to try to stay at our hotel, what would that experience be like? We walk them through that. We spent it in a variety of ways, in terms of understanding our protocols. On the associate side, yesterday I participated, and we have wellness calls that we do on a monthly basis with our furloughed associates, where we are talking to them, giving them updates on the state of the business, what we're doing to try to manage that, how we're trying to on our recovery strategies, and also what we're doing right now in the meantime to help them to upskill in their areas, so that when they do come back, that they are prepared for that, and they've spent some time and invested in themselves to continue to be able to develop their career. So and the conversations we have on those calls, I will say people, they believe in the culture that we've created. They want to continue to be a part of it. It's very important to them. They have a passion for this business. They want to hold on as best they can. They understand that they have a future. But we're obviously very honest about what's happening. We don't have a timeline on return to work yet. but we're telling them everything we are doing about it. And I think that has created, I think, a bit more calm in their lives. The other thing that we've been doing very, very actively is advocacy with the government around the emergency wage subsidy program, what we're doing with respect to our owner groups to help them so that they can pay furlough salaries and benefits and all those kinds of things. So we've been very active in that area to try to push the needle wherever we can. And I think our employees appreciate that. I know our customers find that, they want to do business with good business people. So I think that's been helpful.
Juanita?
My situation is similar to Laura in that our approach was to completely over communicate during this time, especially with our team members. And we were forced in a situation where the foundation of our business is based on culture and it's based on people. And we were forced to furlough like at the beginning, 100% of our employees. And so we had to consciously decide they're still part of our family. We just had no choice to make that decision. We still need to treat them like family. So we started the pandemic with weekly calls, and then that's transitioned into monthly calls. And in our culture, we call them power hours, and normally we do them 4 times a year, where we bring all of the team members of the company in to let them know what's happening, and it's a rah and it's a celebration. So obviously the tone of those communications have changed, but it is around supporting, informing them on what's happening, what's the reality in the business, full transparency, what we're doing on a government level, advocacy and changing policies on subsidies and on patios and on liquor laws and on hours of operation and all of those things. We're giving them an option to be part of that. So if they have any solutions, if they have any ideas, that this core skeleton team that has been really tasked with, let's have jobs for people when this is over. Let's preserve the company and get through this so that we can all come out of this on the other side. Over communicating and still maintaining that culture and that community, I think, was a big thing. The other element that we had to focus on culture-wise is health and wellness. And in the best of times in the hospitality industry and restaurant industry in particular, it's a big issue. And a big issue for our demographic. And you layer a global pandemic on that, and of course it's going to become a much bigger issue. And so we felt the responsibility as an employer to play a big and a proactive role in providing health and wellness programs and opportunities for people to connect with each other, even though they may not necessarily be on the payroll. Helping them navigate through the government subsidies, making sure that they are aware of all of the options out there, making some exceptions for, as we started to bring some people back, we started in the summer bringing 30% back. We're probably now at prior to this recent lockdown, we were almost at 50%, but we're still treating the rest of those team members as family and still communicating and over communicating with them and preserving jobs for them when we do recover. And our recovery in Toronto, like we're essentially, I think we have another year of this. There's great news of Pfizer and Moderna coming out with options. I think it's going to be a hardship until we get to the spring. The summer, because of our patios, I think will offer a much greater or quicker recovery. And my assessment is in a year from now, my business will be 80% of what it was a year ago, which is good.
Which is good indeed. So Wayne, the companies are making efforts to communicate. We heard over communicate with employees or former employees or furlough employee, whatever. On this, by the same token, we have to communicate also with our current student and also with the upcoming students who may be thinking about hospitality and tourism as a career. So how do we work with industry to communicate, and what do we communicate about?
Well, the thing about it is that there's always opportunity. And one of the things that we found, for example, after 9/11, and we saw it after the 2008, so when we got into 2009, 2010, those who are graduating this year are probably not going to be in terrible shape. And the thing about it is, with the number of people who, now Canada's a little different than the US because of the unemployment and the healthcare situation in Canada, people are more willing to are able to hang on longer than our friends to the South, where there's a lot of people, the unemployment insurance is not nearly as generous, and you have real healthcare. So you lose your healthcare when you lose your employment. So you have to find something. So that means a lot of the lower level managers and the mid-level managers have to find another job, and they leave the industry quite quickly. So for example, I was looking at a lot of my alumni from down south. A lot of them are left the industry, and they have no intention to come back because they had to leave. They were kind of forced out, and then they got into insurance and healthcare and sales of all different types. And once again, it makes sense for that environment. Here, it might be a little different because of the government subsidies and the way that's structured. I think that's why the government subsidies are so important, because that'll save a lot of those middle managers coming back, or entry level managers coming back into the industry. But what we typically see after these things is a lot of opportunity. So if you're graduating in the next 2 years, chances are, if you're good at what you're doing, you're going to get promoted really, really quickly. We really saw this in 2009, 2010 in particular. There'd be people where they would be hired at a front desk and they'd be a front desk manager in 6 months. Where in years past, you would be doing a year, you'd be the assistant front desk manager, and then you'd be 2 years before you get into that position. So you see a very different career trajectories in these type of environments. So same thing with restaurants, with the number of restaurants closing down, unfortunately, but that means there's going to be a whole bunch of restaurants afterwards opening up. There's still going to be demand out there. It may be smaller, but every single one of those restaurants are like opening. And it's the same thing with hotels. One of the things a lot of people don't understand is when all these properties, when they do reopen after this, it's almost like reopening. Even if a hotel's operating, they're operating at 30%. But if all of a sudden you're starting to operate at 100%, it's like doing a hotel opening. You're reopening the place. You could have been open forever, but you're reopening. So it's a really good chance to get a lot of really good experience in a very short amount of time. So if you want to talk about silver linings, that's actually one of the biggest benefits to being a young person coming into this industry. There's going to be a ton of opportunities over the next 3-4 years that probably wasn't even occurring in the last couple of years. So I think that's one of the ways that we can really work. The other thing that we have to do to work with our industry partners is to make sure that, as we come out of COVID, I think everyone will agree here, we've talked about this multiple times, is that cross-training is going to become more and more important. So we have to prepare students to be adaptable and be cross-trained to do multiple roles across an organization to make them extremely valuable when they come out and graduate. So I think having a wide set of skill sets, once again, people skills are not going to be replaced. Analytical skills, being able to take a bunch of really good information, diagnose it and make good decisions is not going to change, no matter where you are. So these are the types of we need to teach transferable job skills where people will go in and be able to, no matter what tasks they're giving, being able to adapt and change into those things as the industry is changing. Because the reality is the industry was changing even before this. The technology was coming in, everything was coming in. All this is going to do is exacerbate it and make it go quicker. And I think that's the one thing you're going to see coming out of this is the change is going to happen much quicker than it would have happened without it. So, but I think adaptability and working with our industry to make sure that we're developing skill sets where they can go in and be adaptable and be good leaders and be good managers. That's something I think is going to be a big difference. Our role in education.
Yeah. So Wayne, thank you for that. That's your perspective from the university side. Shalap, what's your perspective from the industry side?
I feel that when we're talking about skills and change, one thing that is very clear is that as we prepare for recovery, the level of competition is going to be extremely high. It's not going to be what we had pre-COVID level, because when the demand is high, everybody can sell. But it's when the demand is low and it's still recovering, but the supply is still there. You still have a similar number of restaurants. Still have similar number of hotels. It'll take time before there'll be some more changes, wider changes in the industry to rationalize, to bring supply and demand closer to each other. But the level of competition is going to be really, really high. And that means that the kind of skills that are needed are the ones that help you create medium-term, longer-term sources of competitive advantage, and in every field. And whether it is in analytics or it's in operation service delivery, in every area, level of competition will go up substantially. And therefore, we'll have to fight for the more talented people. And so that's a huge challenge, that because we are seeing a lot of people being furloughed, when the industry starts recovering and we need people, there'll be so much effort needed in retraining. Because if there are people who are coming from outside the industry, or they are fresh to the industry, if I had a private butler at Raffles who worked there for 10 years or 15 years, now you're having somebody who has entered the industry a year ago. And so the amount of training needed is going to be so much higher. And that's why the industry on all sides needs to have much tighter collaboration and coordination between the university and the restaurants and hotels. Because if they don't collaborate and if we don't stay engaged, and to the point earlier from both Laura and Juanita about communication, it's communicating to manage change. But if we don't stay engaged, if we don't give them the confidence and trust that we want to help them manage their careers. Career development and mentoring is a huge aspect of this, because especially at early stages of their career, students need to have, fresh graduates need to have the confidence that the company is taking care of them. And so I think the university and the industry, the companies need to work closely to develop mentoring and career development programs to keep them engaged and give them that confidence. We all enter the industry because we are passionate about, hotels, restaurants, service, etc. But it's up to the leaders at, every level to make sure that people stay motivated. And it's in this industry, in service industry, it's a three-way relationship between the customer, the employee, and the hotel management company or the owner. And the interaction between the employee and the customer, that takes place in isolation. Like, you are not, the general manager is not sitting next to the server when the server is interacting with the guest. And the only way you can ensure a very high quality interaction and loyalty from customer is if you keep the employee motivated and informed. And so that's why, going back to the points from Laura and Juanita, managing change, communication, is so key.
Yes, thank you, Shalap. So, but we have some students who have some very direct questions, and Laura, we had your colleague Marisa, who was on campus, Marisa Solomita, to talk about the job opportunities and this type of thing. But at the moment, it's difficult for her because there are no opportunities, there are no internship, there is no management and training program. So one student is asking a question, he says, or she says, I don't know, I'll be graduating in the spring, 6 months from now. Do you think at that time there will be some opportunities for graduates? And if not, is it a good time to continue to study? So maybe first half of the question for Laura and the second half for Wayne.
I would say yes and yes. I have a daughter. One of my daughters is at George Brown College in the School of Hotel Management. And she said to me literally, "Mom, should I stick with this?" And I said, absolutely. In one, she was supposed to have an externship next semester. Now they're only offering, for obvious reasons, a virtual one. I suggested we defer that so that you wait until you can get a face-to-face externship, so you can get all the opportunities that come with all of that. In the meantime, I said, continue to upskill. What is it that you're passionate about in the industry, and how can you take that time to continue to upskill yourself? So She is very passionate about events planning, so she's going to do some work there. She also is interested in sustainable tourism. She's going to spend some time and do some work on that side of it. So, and exactly what you all have talked about, that demand will return. And we do believe it could be somewhat like a light bulb, where we'll have to very quickly, mobilize so that we can get talent back in. And it's going to come back at different ways in different locations. So I would suggest that if you're a student that is flexible and would like to explore other parts of Canada, we think the resort areas will continue to have high demand. I think Shalap mentioned luxury. We believe luxury is going to come back faster. We know that families, wealthy families want to come back and they take longer trips, they stay longer, they pay more, and they're organizing right now and thinking about what those trips are. So, I do believe that we just have to use this time wisely. So, and think about what people are doing at home right now. They are exploring the internet. They're learning so much about food and wine and fashion and travel and cities and everything that people are. So we need to also, if we're in the travel and hospitality and food business, we need to be spending the time to learn about that ourselves, so that when the time comes, then we can be the experts. Because after all, people are already experts in their own homes at what they're doing. So when then they go out and they have an experience at a hotel or a great restaurant, then they're really looking for, a quite extraordinary experience. So those are all the things that I would recommend that you should be doing now. But I do agree with what everyone has said, especially Wayne. We do have to be flexible. We have to think about how we can have transferable skills and a cross section of skills. Right now in our hotels, we have, as I said, very little business and not a lot of staff right now, but the staff that are working across various departments. They're wearing a lot of different hats, and the skills that they're picking up from that and the relationships they're building with other associates and other customers is really quite unique. And it's something that I think is going to really carry with them as we go along, into the future.
Yeah. Wayne, we've had a few students going from, straight from the bachelor's degree to the master's degree. Is that a good strategy for students?
Well, I kind of have a two-frame advice. The thing about grad school, I've always said, is you have to have an exit plan. You have to know why you're going to grad school. If you're just going because it's fifth year and I have nothing better to do, you're probably not going to get the maximum you need to get out of a program like that. You know what I mean? If you go in and there are certain skills you want to develop, you have certain weaknesses, you have a hole in your resume, you have something that you could bring forward with it and optimize your benefits out of it, then I would be thinking about grad school and things like that. I really do think come summer, from everything we're reading, everything we're seeing, and the latent demand, I think it may not happen in April or May, right when you graduate, but I think by July 1, I think you're going to see some movement. It just looks like that. There's the latent demand that you're seeing out there, the amount of web searches and all that stuff. If you look in all these numbers, you look at how many people. There's a lot of people who have a lot of savings right now. There's a really interesting article in the Financial Times looking at how Canadians have more savings than they have in a long time. So it's a really kind of interesting kind of world. I think it's once again, you have people who are doing okay with this, and then you have people who aren't doing okay with this. But I think there is a number of people who are doing okay, and that latent demand is going to be there. It's just a matter of how quickly it comes back. But in terms of grad school, my advice is always to be, what is your end game from it? What are you trying to achieve from it? And what makes sense? What's your end game from? If it's just doing a fifth year because I don't have anything else to do, I'm not sure that's the best use of your money. But, once again, but if you really think there's an end game there and you could really develop certain skill sets that'll make you more marketable and make you a better candidate on the job market, sure, that's a perfect time to go do something.
So interesting question from Emilia, who is one of our grads. She says that hotels and hospitality in general are highly focused on seniority. And as we're going to recover little by little, there will be opportunities maybe to share working time. In other words, could companies consider having multiple employees working shorter time periods in order to give employability benefits to a greater number of people?
I can answer that. With Marriott, we have what's called, it's very almost exactly what you're describing. It's called workforce innovation. And it's really around training associates to work in a variety of different roles, which creates opportunity for them to be able to learn different skills. It also helps us manage the ebbs and flows of the hospitality industry and the occupancies that fluctuate or seasonality that occurs in our industry. So it's really, I think, on the heels of what you're discussing around how we set up our workforce to manage our business and how we set up our associates for success so that we have that employee retention, which is really important because, you know, one thing we are known for, our associates who come to work for Marriott stay with Marriott, and because they're able to build their career and grow their career because we have so many different sectors, you know, and different business streams that we have. So I think what you're describing makes a lot of sense. You know, we have some issues we have to deal with, whether it's union agreements and things that we have that are already in place. But in fairness, the industry wants to continue to grow and evolve, and they recognize that, as Shalap mentioned, we've had prior to COVID, we had an absolute you know, deficit in terms of talent. So we've had to be innovative to think about that. And I think what's going to come about now from this pandemic, which I do think is a silver lining, is we've all had to really quickly advance all the plans with that. And I think it's going to pay off for us in the long term.
Okay, thank you. Juanita, what about you? I mean, is that something that you would consider to get more of your staff back to work?
Yeah, in a little bit of a different way. Our industry, or our business in particular, all privately owned, and we don't have to deal with unions. But we do, and we're not, it's not about tenure and it's not about all of that stuff. We really look at it through the lens of, do you have the right skill set to add the biggest impact to the business? And especially as we've gone through COVID, where there is a need for, I use the term that, you know, we've been under pressure, but pressure creates diamonds. And we see throughout COVID, all of these diamonds kind of popping up throughout the business. And I think as we look at new people coming into the business, it is around that ability to be able to add value and think strategically, wear a number of different hats. The growth that's happening, like individual growth that's happening in the last 6 months of, you know, a front of house server or an assistant manager who is all of a sudden playing HR during the day and security at evening and doing finance in between, and really embracing this notion of entrepreneurialism, I think is really important for us. So through that lens, we create any and all opportunities for people with that skill set, for people who have that value that we have from an entrepreneurial standpoint, who can come in and wear multiple of hats, can think of the business through technology or through finance, but then be service oriented. And wow, if you have all of that, we create roles even on a part-time basis, like as a coach. So you might be a server with high potential, but then we train for that coaching position so that you can evolve into a manager. And as we have been living in these volatile times where really what we're able to operate is at the whim of what the government indicates, we have been gearing more towards hourly roles and using the offsite for training. So we're open to any and all. Like I think what COVID has created is an environment where everything is off the table. The business that we knew a year ago is not the way we're going to operate in the future. Like we need to be nimble, we need to be adaptive, we need to think differently, and we need to provide opportunities and not put a round peg in a square hole.
Absolutely. So you make me I wanted to address a couple of other things, but just to follow your last comment, Juanita, that makes me move into another question then. You said that crises are spurring innovation. It's, everything's off the table, we change. So what kind of innovation can we expect from industry? There are some structural changes that are likely to happen, possibly in the hotels, in the food services, most likely. What kind of changes are we seeing?
Oh gosh, I think right across the board. I can tell you from at least 90% of our business has changed since COVID. Like every single operating procedure, the menu changed, all of the safety protocols changed, the technology that we use has changed, all of the contracts, every aspect of it has changed. And I think as we go into the future, the economic model of the way restaurants are operating has been put under pressure during COVID and has shined light on opportunities coming out of COVID that are going to fast track the evolution of the business. So the role that technology plays in even the customer experience, the role technology plays in the aggregators and takeout and delivery models, the pressure that those people have on the overall business, and all of those things are going to play a big role in the economics and the overall customer experience and dining experience. And it's all going to be new.
Yeah, Shalap, Laura, any insight into the structural change that we should be expecting?
Laura, go ahead first.
Well, I was going to, Juanita touched on some of them, certainly technology, contactless travel, and how are we going to, we had, prior to COVID, we were already on our way with mobile check-in, all of that technology, and we've, accelerated all of that quickly for obvious reasons. I think you'll see more and more of where technology plays a role. Certainly with hybrid meetings that we're all, Zoom, you can see we're all living on now. What will that look like in the future, and how will that impact our business? How will it impact business travel, which we're going to understand? How is working from home or working from anywhere going to impact? There could be very positive attributes that come apart from that, and there could be obviously some negativism that could occur. All in all, I think what we all have to be very cognizant of is that people want to travel, people want to meet. Their business will come back. It may be different in some ways, but what we've learned is that we need to continue to be flexible. We also know that these safety protocols and that what we put in place, they are not going to go away. Perhaps they might be dimmed, but I think we all know that it's probably inevitable that we will have another situation of some sort like this in the future that we're going to have to be better prepared for. So I think that will. I think the exciting thing that I see is that there's all new business streams that are coming about, like Juanita talked about, that we've all found some new business opportunities through all of this. Certainly families traveling together and wanting to be away together. We think about what one market sector of our industry is the extended stay and business. And that has, that was always running, 40-50% occupancy in the extended stay hotels. I think we see that with luxury. I think we'll see more hotels being built now with more suite product, because that'll be important for people to be able to do that. So I think there's some really exciting things that will stick around after all of this.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead. You're saying something.
Oh, I was just going to add and build on what Laura said, and thinking about Frederick's question around how the business is changing. And I know that our labor model has made a big change. And so even coming out of COVID, we are staffing differently than we would have staffed before. And it's creating more opportunities for growth and development amongst individuals. So whereas before you were coming in and you had to spend a certain amount in a certain role, and you had to learn the bus job, then you go to the hostess job, then you do the server job, and then you do the bartender job. Now that's one job. and you got to learn them all, and you got to learn them all quickly. But guess what happens to the progression that happens in that environment, where you, instead of spending 2 years, like you're learning what you could do in 2 years, you're learning that in 6 months. And when there's downtime, you're doing budgets and you're analyzing and you're interacting with consumers on social media. So you're really acting like an entrepreneur and wearing all of these hats, and all through this lens of being, creating this transporting experience and really acting as though you're an owner.
But isn't that going to be a threat to quality if we do a little bit of everything and you know, we lose focus on what we're doing and we may not be performing as well?
I don't think so. I think now we're in a different business, like we're privately owned. I like to think of ourselves as like a sophisticated mom and pop shop. But if you think of everyone treating the business as if it were their own, right? And this is how we train, and we're training this entrepreneurial spirit, and they are wearing several hats. When you go into a restaurant and the owner greets you at the door, and then you see him checking you out, and you feel well taken care of, right? Like it's not, you don't feel like you're being stretched, and it does come in the preparation in training those individuals.
Yeah, Shalap?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, the pressure cooker situation that we are currently in, where you're seeing a decline in business, as well as, most importantly, as we recover and the very high level of competition that will create the pressure cooker situation, that is ideal for innovation. But my concern is who in the industry is innovating. Because just like what happened with the intermediaries coming in to the industry with latest technology for booking systems and eroding that portion of the margin from the hotels. I think the hotel companies, restaurants, etc., need to be very conscious of where they choose to focus on themselves to innovate in terms of technology players. Otherwise, they'll quickly see other players coming in from outside the industry, technology players, creating solutions that help them achieve a good bottom line that is demanded by the owners, and not achieving the profits that they were used to in the past. But overall, I think for the customer, I think it'll be awesome because technology would be a great enabler. And I think they have to be very conscious of what the customer's changing needs are and evolve based on that. For the employees, for the fresh graduates, they need to be very nimble, as been mentioned earlier, able to be able to adapt to changing needs that are happening in the industry, and to be able to adapt to those aspects. You know, it's not the same industry that was there 20 years ago, 10 years ago. So whether it's analytics, or whether it's other areas that are opening up, how to adapt to those areas. I think that'll be very interesting for them as well. So I think overall, in terms of career opportunities, they are much wider. It's not just limited to hotels and restaurants, because there are so many more players. I don't think we should be focused also as fresh graduates and young graduates only on certain operations areas. The industry is much bigger than that, and they could easily show a lot of value by joining in those areas.
So Wayne, how do we respond to all this? Because if there is one sector that we know is very slow, it's the university sector. So, how are we going to be able to, every time we want to change a course in a program, it takes 2 years or 3 years. So how can we respond to that quest for skills and knowledge that the industry needs from us?
Well, I think this is where we have to be adaptable, where we're more and more teaching towards skill set. The content is actually secondary to the actual teaching the skill sets. People skills, adaptability, being able to have numeracy skills, being able to look at a spreadsheet or a P&L and make interpretations from it. I think these are things that we're going to have to become more responsible for on our end, is ensuring that students are developing skill sets that are transferable once they get out into the workforce. Because the reality is, I kind of think, I was thinking back when I took Intro to Tourism, and I'm not that old. I promise I'm not that old. We still had black screens with green letters on them, and we spent 3 weeks learning airport codes and travel agency codes in those courses. Now I'm teaching hospitality, and the industry is almost unrecognizable. But what is the same? The ability to deliver high quality service and build strong relationships with customers, the ability to make good business decisions, to be able to look at data, to judge what is good data from poor data and make a good decision based upon that is still there. The need for leaders, the need for people to come into organizations and be leaders, the need for creativity and innovation. Those are the skill sets that no matter where the industry goes, our students should be able to take with them no matter where it happens. So these are the things I think we really need to concentrate on as academics. And this is where we need to work with our industry partners to bring more projects into the classroom where we can work with you to create innovative solutions and have people look at those data sets and work with them and be able to have these discussions to see what makes sense and what doesn't in that safe environment. The only thing I'm always concerned with is that we love talking to our students and we love selling the industry as a great place to be. But one of the things, it'll be interesting to see which way the pendulum swings after this is, I'm always afraid of, we tell our students, this is hospitality, you're working evenings and weekends and holidays. That's part of the gig, especially early career. But we got to be careful that our industry partners are also not burning out our young people as soon as they get in working 60-hour work weeks and that type of thing. And next thing you know, we're losing people out of it. So I think that's the balancing act. I think part of that is them understanding sort of what our students are looking for. This Generation Z is a very different generation than millennials. Millennials, had a totally different. Generation Z basically grew up in their formative years in the recession era. So a lot of them saw their parents and their things get laid off or fired or whatever during that time, and it's changed their approach to how they're doing it. So I think development and working with our industry partners to develop training, like ongoing training programs and learning and building those connections beyond just the 4 years to working with you to make sure that we're flowing through, I think makes a whole lot of sense. So it's not just a 4-year relationship, it's a lifelong relationship. And those are the things that we have to start thinking about as universities in a different way, because we want to make sure that the people we're placing in the things are being treated fairly and well too, because that's how we're going to sell it to you. So I think one of the things that's really got to change, and this is one of the things I've learned, the people who are on campus are the people who get the best talent. So the more they're on campus and the more you're engaging the students on campus from an industry perspective, the more likely you are to build relationships, long-term relationships with these young people, and the more likely they are to want your internships, to want your co-ops, to want to stay with you long-term because they see that relationship there. It's not just an economic thing, it's they want to build a relationship with you as a company. And I think that's one of the differences that we're seeing. So I think this is one of those where both sides have to come together a little bit more than what we do. We're preaching to the choir in this room, but there's a whole bunch of people who aren't necessarily singing from the hymn book.
Absolutely, Shalap.
If I could just make one point that, we talked about how technology is going to be a great enabler. It's going to give rise to a lot of solutions to help us achieve process efficiencies, better bottom line, etc. But also, I would say that younger folks, young students, fresh graduates are likely to be able to embrace technology much faster. They are able to pick up on it very quickly, whether it is social media, whether it is gadgets, and especially for hotels in the lower tier and the mid tier. Also, in some cases, in different ways for the luxury end. Technology is going to enable better level of service, faster level of service, achieving better bottom line. But what I'm saying is that the younger generation, those that are just getting graduated or still in their 20s, early 30s, they're going to be able to adapt to changing technologies much faster. So the challenge is going to be, I think, also about reskilling of the older workforce. As technology comes in various areas, how do you reskill people who have the mindset of a hotelier, of a restaurateur? How do you make them reskill to use technology to provide better service? When I joined sales and marketing many years ago, my boss, the director of sales and marketing, she had never used a computer. She didn't have a computer. But she and her assistant is the one who used to type everything for her. She never used a computer, but she could sell like no one else. She was amazing. People would just eat out of her hand, and that skill set is so key. And I think there are very great advantages for the youngsters coming in at this time as well as a result of that.
Frederick, maybe I can expand on that a little bit. And some of us were at the Tourism Industry Association of Canada conference earlier this week, and we sponsored a futurist to talk about what we see in the future in our industry. And one point that he challenged us all on is the notion of us learning, especially in our industry, to be better storytellers, and with an effort to able to expand the business that comes to Canada globally. Because let's face it, we have extraordinary locations in Canada and places to travel to and to explore and that. But when you think about technology and bringing that together, who better than this generation that's coming forward, who knows how to use that and be able to tell stories? We're doing it now on the social channels. I'm still trying to understand TikTok, I'm not going to lie, but I think I could see where a channel like TikTok is a really cool way of bringing travel and the travel experience to life. And I think that that's going to be certainly a leg up that this generation is going to have in order to help our business. I bet you it's going to help Juanita's business on how to really create the experience of food and beverage. I think it's certainly going to help us in travel and traveling to destinations, and it goes on and on. Sustainable tourism, all the other areas of growth that I think that we're in. So I think it's exciting that that these folks are going to be able to bring that to the table.
Laura. So as we talk about strategy, also we have to think about the winners and the losers, and we know there are already some losers. Unfortunately, many companies are putting the key under the mat, right? There are some bankruptcies in the restaurant business, in the hotel business as well. We're starting to see that. So what are the winning business strategy in this time of crisis? We're not out of it yet. So what are we planning for the winter, for facing that second wave, if we can call it a second wave, that will make us or make you stay alive?
I can speak to that because I think the second wave is for us, is even harder than the first wave, because in the first wave, the government subsidies were all there, and we have restaurants in Toronto and entering into outdoor dining from April to October is much more palatable than entering into outdoor dining from November to April. So we need to go back to the rule book that we just wrote on the first 7 months of how we got through all of this. How are we innovating? How are we really taking a tight look at our finances? How are we continuing to engage with our consumers and just adapt our offering of this transporting experience that needs to be outside of the four walls that we're no longer allowed to enter? So for us, that translates into meal kits at home. It translates into technology and social media and creating chef type experiences with video, but meal packages that you can then experience at home with your family. It means for us adding in a marketplace and transitioning some of our restaurants into takeout wine shops and a little bit more of a grocery model to get people throughout the winter. We're adding things like subscription programs so people can get their mystery chef kits once a week and we can still be part of their lives. Like our consumers were coming in, our guests were coming in 2 to 3 times a week, and we don't want to lose that connection. They don't want to lose that connection. We have an obligation as our vision to still create that transporting experience. It just needs to be different than what it was when they were able to come in and dine in the restaurant. So we've relooked at all of those things, and we're in a position now to, we've been rolling them out over the last couple of weeks, and the hope is that's going to carry us throughout the winter.
Great, Juanita. Fantastic. What about the hotel sector? It may be a little bit more difficult for the hotels, huh?
You know what we've done, Frederick? We have led with our commitment to clean, because what we said was if we can convince people to take that first trip and to take their family away or get away with a couple getaway or whatever, they will, once you have that first and you see firsthand that what we're able to deliver on and what that experience can be, you will be much more prone to taking a second trip. So we're very focused on that, on really talking about that when you are ready and you feel able that you want to travel, we're ready to welcome you. The other thing is exactly what Juanita is talking about. We have challenged all of our hotel leaders to be innovative and think about ways that they can focus on that local traveler, that local customer, whether it's an overnight stay or you know, a meal kit, you know, to go home. You know, we've had great examples of hotels that have created Halloween in their hotel, where just within your family, but created an experience that they could come in. You know, we're doing things. We had a comedian in Atlantic Canada over the weekend that sold out the hotel to the extent they could, keeping, you know, with social distancing. But people wanted to get away, and they listened, and they be able to do it in a way that they could feel like they're normal again. So we're creating all these different ideas to be able to build business. And I think it's working. You know, I look at my occupancy in December, and my transient occupancy in January is better than December. And you know, January in Toronto is not good. So there's certainly things that are happening. The other thing we're focusing on is, you know, I think there was an earlier point that Shalap made was, you know, there is travel out there. We know that the essential services, we know the food industry is, you know, grocery industry, and the distribution industry is, we know healthcare is busy. We know pharmaceuticals are going on. We're going where that business is to see how we can help. And you know, and one benefit that we have as an international company is we get to see, you know, 8 weeks behind us, what has been working, you know, and how can we adapt that to our own marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we need snow so people can ski. That's also very helpful.
I think agility is key. You know, being able to adapt, we were talking about, I think the companies that are agile will be able to survive and thrive as we recover. And I think new entrants, smaller companies will be better at it, most likely. Also, large chains, branded companies are going to be better because of better technical know-how, deeper set of knowledge, competence level than individual players and smaller companies. Unfortunately, I think pandemic is going to give rise to more consolidation, and bigger players are going to get even bigger. Listening to investors in the industry, I feel very encouraged, the excitement that I see in their eyes and when they speak about acquisitions. So in the hotel sector, they are you know, salivating at properties that they could not have dreamt to acquire in London, Paris, Hong Kong, other places, that they are able to now actively look to expand their portfolio. So it's not like there's no money. It's you know, maybe the current owners will change to another new investor, but there will be marginally, there will be some hotel that might eventually convert to apartments, but that's going to be far lesser and not in the immediate term anyway. But I'm very encouraged by what I hear from the investors in terms of how actively they are looking at properties. And just the opportunity to be agile and adapt is what will see companies through this pandemic. But for the smaller players, it's going to be much more challenging. But there, I think if technology players are available, then you know, they come up with solutions that help them, then that would certainly help even the smaller players adapt. Bigger players take longer to come up with newer solutions because of their size, but they are able to come up with something more compelling in order to compete in time.
Thank you, Shalap. So we've heard from Laura, Juanita, and Shalap, and maybe Wayne. I'm conscious of time, and we need to wrap up in a very few minutes. So, Wayne, what's your conclusion and your perspective on building those relationships between university and the industry in order to work an effective recovery?
One of the things that I've learned over my experience working through, let's just say, a few years of this, is that with this always comes opportunity. There's always opportunity here to grow. There's always an opportunity to develop relationships. And now's the time to do it, not once the recovery is happening and everyone's going 100 miles an hour. So this is the time to start reaching out and to start talking about these partnerships. It's a little more difficult because you're doing it over Zoom and you can't go visit and things like that. But now's the time to start planting those seeds and start building those relationships. It's really good that Marriott is still coming out, even though they don't know what they don't know what they're offering. But it's really good to keep that relationship going and keep that building going. And I think that's one of the important things for businesses to understand, that they need to keep engaged, because there is light at the end of the tunnel and it is going to happen. And when you need it, you're going to need that spigot, not just on a little bit, you're going to need that spigot turned on full. So the companies that are engaged now are going to be the ones that are most likely to get their bucket full, as opposed to the ones that are just dripping. So these are the things I always say that's really important. For now's the time to develop partnerships. Now's the time to work together. And I think a couple of things that you're going to see, I think you're going to see a lot more innovation in the field. I think you're going to see a lot of small businesses open. I think you're going to see a lot of independent restaurants open after this. I think you're going to see that. It'll probably be August, September next year, but I think you're going to see a lot of small businesses open up. When you get a lot of businesses closed, that means there's a lot of property available. Rents start coming down to a more reasonable level, and all of a sudden your barriers to open starts lowering down, and you get a lot more people who can open up. So you're going to see a lot of really kind of unique, fun product. I agree you're going to see the consolidation of the big guys, but I also think you're going to see a whole bunch of proliferation of small independent businesses, and see where they can go and see where they can make it after this. And we've seen that pattern over and over. The last thing is, in terms of what we need to do and what I recommend for students, is, you've heard it all night: adaptability, 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 and skill sets. One of the things I strongly encourage everyone to do, if you have the rest of this year or the next 2 years or whatever, from a student perspective, really work on developing your skills, really work on developing your networks, because there's gonna be opportunity. You just gotta be willing and able to seize it. And that's what's going to give you the competitive advantage once you leave school, is being able to do a whole bunch of those things and do it well.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you to all of the attendees. I hope I've answered, or we have answered, most of the questions that came up in the chat, in the Q&As. Laura, Juanita, Shalap, thank you very much. Wayne, thank you for providing the academic perspective to this panel. And before we close, I would like to pass the proverbial microphone to Sonia.
Great. Thank you so much, Frederick. Thank you for moderating. Thank you to all of our panelists for their time this evening, for their perspective and the contribution to this discussion. I just wanted to promote 2 more of our speaker series, our Compass speaker series. So next week we have, on November 24th, Trevor Jonas Benson and Camilo Montoya Guevara from Culinary Tourism Alliance, and they will share their work with destinations through 2 case studies of food tourism development. So they've been doing some work on the Indigenous culinary tourism strategy in Canada, and so I think they have a lot of really cool things to share. And then on December 3rd, we have Dr. Jeff Wall, who I always like to call the godfather of sustainable tourism. And he will be presenting his research on the sustainable livelihoods approach to tourism development. So I think they're both really interesting and contributing to this discussion. You can register for both of these events by scanning the QR codes displayed on the screen or through the links sent in the chat. Make sure to follow us on social media at HTMResearch and subscribe to our newsletter for announcements about next year's speaker series and more research updates. So thank you all again, and have a very good night.
Thank you again, Sonia. Thank you, all of you panelists. I think it was an interesting panel. I see some of the comments coming down. I think people had an interest in following the conversation, and so we enjoy. That's one of the benefits of COVID. You know, we've never had those kinds of online panels before, and now we do. And we certainly take advantage of this on different topics, and we are hoping that little by little we're going to be building a set of loyal attendees to come and listen to all of those panels. Again, Juanita, Shalap, Laura, Wayne, thank you very, very much. Brian, you know, behind the comment panel, and Sonia, thank you very much for your assistance also. Congratulations to all and have a good night.
Thank you.
Best wishes, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.